All right, what is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman. I am live following the big matchup between the Eagles and the Chiefs, Super Bowl 57. And what a game it was! What a game it was! It really, from start to finish, could not have been better. I mean, in many different aspects, it was about as good of a game as we possibly could have asked for. Right, from a viewing perspective, the pleasure of the viewer, from an entertainment values perspective. I mean, that's about as good of a game as you could possibly ask for, right? It was a rough way to end. Mike, what's going on, man? I see you in here. It was a rough way to end. Um, we'll touch on that a little bit later in the stream once things kind of get rolling here. It was a tough way to end, though. That is for sure. But outside of the final minute and a half, I do think. I mean, how much more could we ask for, man? I mean, a classic shootout. Little spurts of defensive. Good defensive plays, offensive explosions. It really was. It was fun. It really was fun. I mean, whether you're a Chiefs or an Eagles fan, it was fun. I know a lot of Eagles fans are not quite happy with that result, but at least from a non-biased perspective, from someone that wasn't, a fan of either team involved, just being a neutral watcher for the sake of entertainment, it was a good game. Let's be honest. It was a good game. I thought it was far better than the game we saw last year. It was better than the game we saw in Super Bowl 55. Entertaining, high scoring, good halftime show, good national anthem. It was really about as much as you can hope the Super Bowl to be. It really was a great shootout. Pokemon, I saw your comment on my short regarding what I thought would happen in the game, and it's tough. I felt like it made the right read. I think the stats would back that up. Just sometimes, like you mentioned in your comment, Mahomes just was the X factor, and it turned out that Andy Reid was. I feel like Andy Reid was the biggest difference. Not even to take away from Mahomes in that epic performance, but Andy Reid was a huge difference here. I can't cap the refs. Fuck the Eagles. I mean, hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't a fan of the call. Hold on, I'm getting my water. But it was a hold, right? I guess the thing is, should it have been called? Was it enough of a hold to call in that spot? I guess it depends on how you want to call the game. Like I said, I don't want to touch on it too much yet because we're still early in the stream. That's obviously going to be the big talking point of conversation. Oh shoot, my banner has a misspelling. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's a really tough call to make in that spot. I don't know. It's going to be controversial all off season. We're going to be talking about should James Bradbury have been called for that hold? Would the Chiefs have won the game had that not been called? Even if Juju Smith-Schuster, the crazy thing is, even if Juju scores there, that game's far from over. I mean, the only thing that couldn't happen there was the Chiefs getting a first down, and they got it. But yeah, totally, Raul. It was a great game. Outside of that last minute of the way it ended, hard to be upset. Great national anthem, fantastic halftime show from start to finish. You get spurts of good defensive efforts, and then obviously explosions on the offensive side of the ball. Hard to be upset with a Super Bowl like that. Like I said, last year was bad. I did feel like last year's Super Bowl featured two teams that might not have actually deserved to be there. Let's be honest. I mean, the Rams were one Jaquiski Tart drop away from not making it, and the Bengals had to pull off a couple of miraculous upsets, especially in the AFC Championship game, to end up there. It just felt like last year specifically just kind of felt like we didn't see the two best teams play, and I felt like the game didn't really feature that, if you will. This year, on the other hand, I felt like both teams deserved it. Both teams played extremely well, and we saw why both teams were in this position this season. Tough Sirianni, the WN. I didn't even realize he was from Western New York, to be honest with you. That's really cool. He definitely has a Western New York type of attitude to him. Yeah, fact, Raul. I mean, it sucks. It really does. The silver lining in all of this is like, it was great, but the season's over. Football's done. Like, this is what brings us hope, love, and joy every fucking Sunday. And now it's over. Sorry, don't mind my water jug. Last year wasn't bad. I mean, I think it had its moments. Toward the final drive, it was great. The final drive was great by the Rams, but outside of that, I felt like it was kind of a sleeper of a watch. Bradbury should not have been called for the horrible call, but Philly, to me, got outcoached. 100%, man. Philly got outcoached in the second half. They were completely outclassed. I mean, every statistic that you look at, almost every statistic that you look at, I mean, you're like, how did the Eagles lose this game, right? But it really came down to the offensive or the defensive miscues and how they were outcoached defensively. Philadelphia was, from the start of that second half. Mahomes is coming out, supposedly hurt, hobbled, and obviously he definitely was. I'm not saying he wasn't, but he didn't come out as if he did or hurt his ankle prior to that half starting. So I'm not sure if Philadelphia was kind of banking on the fact that we would see a quarterback that was kind of immobile in the pocket or a quarterback that wasn't able to step into throws. Maybe the Eagles were kind of anticipating that. But obviously that wasn't the case. Mahomes was just as mobile as usual. Mahomes was getting out of the pocket, escaping pressure, making throws, stepping into tosses that a guy with an ankle injury, they might not have suspected to be able to make. And then, of course, that massive scramble on that final drive is something they probably didn't expect as well. So, I'm not sure what happened with the Eagles in the second half, right? I think the defense of Philadelphia in the first half, they did their job. They were one Jalen Hurts non-fumble away from being up 21-7 going into half. So Philadelphia really lost this one. They shot themselves in the foot. They were outclassed defensively, and it's as simple as that. 35 points should typically be enough to win, especially when you're supposed to have one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the game. And like Raul says, the pass rush really was invisible. This is probably the most shocking development, if we're being honest here. If we're looking at the game for what it is. A lot of things happened. Andy Reid did his thing. Patrick Mahomes did his thing. Jalen Hurts was fantastic. A.J. Brown was good. Devontae Smith was good. But ultimately, the biggest letdown, which is not what I would have suspected, was the pass rush being essentially invisible. I mean, I know I can't see the statistics yet. They won't be posted probably until around 2 p.m. tomorrow on PFF or probably Pro Football Reference. But I would really like to know how many pressures the Eagles pass rush got on Mahomes, because it really was not many. I know the Chiefs offensive line was it's definitely better than I think advertised. Certainly a solid unit. But that's not stopped the Eagles in the past from at least pressuring, opposing quarterbacks. I think at times Mahomes was flustered. Mahomes was having to scramble around a little bit and make an extra play or so. But never really once did we find Mahomes in a situation where he actually was about to go to the ground, right? I think there was maybe one or two plays specifically that I can remember where they got very close to sacking Mahomes. But outside of that, I mean, it kind of felt like the Eagles pass rush gave me an eerie reminder of what I feel like the Bills pass rush looked like when we played them in the divisional round last year, where we were forcing Mahomes to kind of run around and be creative behind the line of scrimmage. And sometimes he was escaping, but we could not get Mahomes to the ground. And it was the biggest difference maker. And never in a million years did I think we'd be sitting here post-game saying that the Eagles pass rush was most likely not the reason why they lost, but the biggest letdown in this game. Like I said, we don't know how many pressures they had, but it could not have been many, and it certainly wasn't enough. And when you lean on that unit to kind of get you to where you get or where they got to ultimately, to see them just be ultimately invisible was rather shocking and disappointing from someone that chose the Eagles to win. Like I said, I was very happy with the game itself. I was watching for an entertainment from an entertainment aspect, and of course my financial betting investment, but that's another story. I was shocked to see the way that the Eagles defense was simply just outperformed. And I think a lot had to do with the fact that, like Raul says, the pass rush just did not do their job, and it forced there to be a lot more pressure on the secondary of the Eagles, which has been phenomenal this year. Don't get me wrong, but they definitely were major beneficiaries of quarterbacks having to make rush decisions, bad decisions, and kind of really capitalizing on some, rush quarterback play because of what their front four was able to do. But today we saw a Mahomes that was poised, prepared, and not really put in that many of very difficult situations. Anyway, Another great season in the books. You are damn right, Pokemon. Aiden, it is draft season. We still have a lot to look forward to. The offseason is here, but we still have things to talk about. I think KC might actually make a play for D-Hop. I don't know, man. I mean, after that, do you really need to? You just won a Super Bowl without you just won a Super Bowl without a number one receiver, if you will. I mean, at this point, they are the one team in the league that has proven that you don't necessarily need an X weapon on the boundary to really be that difference maker. Obviously, they have Kelsey, of course, but we're seeing a big development in the NFL nowadays where you want to have that 1-2 combo for your pass catchers, right? The Eagles have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. The Bengals have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We also look at who else made it far. I'm drawing blanks. I mean, the 49ers have weapons all over the field. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, for that matter, being those X factors. Who else was in a big game this year? I'm trying to think. But either way, long story short, my point is there's a big trend going on right now of getting your quarterback not only an A weapon, but a B weapon. And it seems like the Chiefs might be an exception to that because you have Andy Reid, one of the greatest minds and the greatest quarterback on the planet. They're the one team that are kind of able to get away with it. Yeah, Juju got a ring. My boss can be mad as hell tomorrow. Well, hey, look, I like Juju. He's a moron sometimes, but I think he's really kind of come back down to earth ever since joining Kansas City, and he got away from his buddy Chase Claypool. So I think he's become a lot more bearable. So I'm happy to see that a hardworking guy like Juju's able to reap the benefits here. Mahomes top 5 all time. It's gonna be really hard to defend to argue against this take going forward, right? 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. Multiple AFC Championship appearances, multiple AFC Championship victories. Yeah, I mean, this guy's the truth, right? Let's talk about this game in depth a little bit more. I mean, the first half was all Philadelphia, right? Let's go through the play-by-play here in the first half. Going into that half, outside of the fumble return touchdown, we probably should have had a 24-7 lead for Philadelphia going into that halftime. But that Jalen Hurts fumble, as great as he played, was honestly, in my opinion, outside of like the flag at the end, I think that was probably the biggest difference in this game. That fumble return kind of gave them life again. Outside of that, the Chiefs hadn't gotten past. Oh no, they did miss the field goal, to be fair. But outside of the first drive, the Chiefs got 7 points on, and then the missed field goal drive. So outside of their first 2 drives in the first half, the Chiefs didn't even get into Eagles territory. And the Eagles should have been going into that half up 24-7. And, as great as Mahomes is, as great as Andy Reid is, the way that the Eagles were playing that football game and the way they dominated the time of possession, I mean, all they would have needed is like one more touchdown. And I mean, I think they win that game, pretty easily just because the Chiefs would have ran out of time, even if they would have made it closer. But yeah, like I said, Jalen Hurts, you played fantastic. Would have been easy MVP for this game. I mean, arguably probably could have been the MVP, even though he lost. Ultimately, that fumble was truthfully the biggest difference maker in this game. I would consider that the biggest play of the game. Between Mahomes playing fantastic, Andy Reid doing his magic behind the line of scrimmage and the play calling. The biggest play in that game, I wouldn't say is that flag necessarily. I would say the biggest play in that game was that fumble return touchdown by Nick Bolton. And I was kind of confused. Jalen Hurts' legs, they were working. But at points I was confuzzled by Shane's inability to recognize the fact that Jalen was more often than not getting stymied on the ground with his legs. He was escaping. He was finding gaps to run off of. But the passing game was working in the first half. And I just was very, very puzzled as to why he kind of continued to kind of force the quarterback carries and the quarterback draws. And, a couple plays prior to the fumble return touchdown, I think it was Hey. Okay, maybe it wasn't that drive, but nevertheless, it wasn't, the design runs weren't working as well as they were used to them working, but the passing game was operating right. They drove down the field on the first drive, pass, and they put up 7 points. The second, the following drive, the first touchdown drive, pass, all the way down the field, and it worked. The second drive, what did they do? They got set back to a penalty. They ran the ball once, and then tried a quick short check down, and then they're at 3rd and 14. They punt. The following drive, what do we got here? Pass. Yep. Oh, this was the missed field goal, 5 yards. How'd they get down the field here? For 5 yards? What happened on this drive? This has to be documented wrong. Oh, no. Okay, I'm reading this right. So the first drive, they passed their way down the field. They scored. The next drive, the penalty set them back. The next drive, the third offensive drive the Eagles had, they scored on that 48-yard bomb to Brown. So the passing game is working all throughout the first half, right? Then we get to the following drive, which is where the fumble happened. You're at 3rd and 5. I don't know. I just think the play call was also skeptical. And it ultimately led to a fumble. I mean, I think you got to pass in that situation. That's your bread and butter, getting the ball in Jalen's hands. But I think the play call was bad, considering the way the passing game was working, and Jalen's got to hold the ball. That was the biggest difference in this game. Wow. That was a huge-ass play, man. That was a huge play. Tater fans crying about some call. Hey, the call is going to be cried about, Ken. Whether you like it or not, people are going to cry about the call. It was a big one, but I won't say it's what ultimately cost the Eagles the game. Cost the Eagles the game because the game was played across more than just that snap. Lucas says this was an all-time great Super Bowl. What they call him Bradbury was BS in my opinion. Every DB does that. All DBs are told to stay on the hip. Yeah, I definitely I'm right there with you. I think the call was tacky. It was a hold in most regards, but it was a tacky one. I guess my problem, and we can talk about it now. We can talk about the call now. We can indulge in it. So let's go back and look at it real quick. I'm gonna pull it up on my screen here. Go over to Bradbury Twitter, share my screen. So this is what we had go down, right? It's really not even much. Like, it's a hold. Like, I'll give the refs that. It is a hold, but oh, come on, internet. I'm hardwired. This is frustrating. Stick with me, fellas. That's the only video on this entire feed that's not going to load. Okay.
You'll see James Bradbury.
Okay. So we see the hold happen. Did we miss it? Does this clip not even get it? It was like, it's hard because it's a little bit pixelated. But with that backhand, it's minuscule. It's a hold. He tugged him, but it's minuscule. It really is. Hold on. Maybe I have to find a better video of it because that was not ideal. I thought I had a good one, but it didn't want to play. Don't stop me. Don't stop me.
Scenario, you'll see.
It's so hard to see, man. Yeah, Bradbury does say he admits he was holding. He tugged the jersey, but tugged is probably an overstatement. It's that backhand right there. It's tough to see. I'm sure that back judge was the one that called it. It's a hold. Is it a hold? I feel like that should have been called. Fuck, man. A hold is a hold. Totally, Harry. I guess my problem comes in. This is where I'm going to tell you where my problem comes in with this flag, right? This is where my issue comes in. Let me share a different tab real quick. My problem comes in with the inconsistency with the refereeing in this league. And we know it's a massive problem, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue as time progresses, right? We're going to go back to this Giants-Commanders matchup. Do we remember this controversy? Can you guys see this? I just want to make sure. Do we remember this? Holy shit, was this horrible. This league, this year specifically, has been notorious for keeping the flag in their pocket because they don't want to make an impact on the game. They want to let the guys play in big spots. That has been the refs' mantra for all of 2022, holding the flag in the pockets so they don't affect the outcome. And I mean, it's been a problem. Like, we were complaining, like, we can't. Fuck me, I'm really botching this management here. It's been a problem that these refs haven't been throwing flags in these spots. Like right here, do we remember this? I mean, Curtis Samuel on this play got mugged, and we'll see the better angle of it in a second. But watch this right here. This was not called. This was not called a penalty. Come on. Look at this shit. I mean, he's all over his back. I mean, this is a flag in every regard to a T. You look up the definition of pass interference in the textbook. This is it. I mean, the fact that that wasn't called was so atrocious. This is a regular season matchup, and we're not calling this. This was such a huge problem this season of refs holding the flag in their pocket in big moments because they don't want to affect the outcome. I mean, that right there is a flag, right? And then we go over here to, hold on, let me share my screen on the other one again. We work our way back over here to the Bradbury hold, and we're talking about the Super Bowl. This is the biggest game of the season. This has the most financial risk for so many viewers involved, me included, on a serious note. This is the biggest stage, right? This is the stage where everyone is watching. All eyes are on you, and the NFL. Everybody's watching the consistency of this league. You want to get the calls correct. I get it. But you're going to call the slight tug of a jersey. This fucking video quality is terrible. But, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This is inconsistency that we can't be having. You can't, in my opinion, if you're going to not throw what happened to Curtis Samuel in that Commanders-Giants regular season matchup, you cannot, and I mean cannot, throw this. This, to me, is the worst type of call you can make in a big spot. This is where I feel like the refs want to let the guys play. That was it. This was the definition of let them play.
James Bradbury, they're going to say grab
some. Hold. So be it. But the term let them play has never applied more in this situation. And if it's going to apply in a random Giants-Commanders regular season finale, if it's going to apply there, then it's got to apply here. It's your biggest stage. You just had a Super Bowl classic. And that's your call? That's your call to end it? I mean, like I said, that wasn't the play that cost the Eagles the game ultimately. But that's your call? You can't do that. You can't do that, in my opinion. You can't. That's just me. It was a ticky-tacky call. Inconsistency we've seen from these refs all year. I thought the refs kept things in check all game. We hadn't seen much at all called. I mean, what was the penalty yardage in this game, man? There really was not much called. The refs threw. Hold on, I gotta find it. The refs threw a total of 9 flags in this game, which was honestly more than I realized. But 9 flags is not a lot. And you know, I felt like for the most part were out of the way. And they impacted the game where they felt was necessary. But yeah, I mean, this too, Joe. I mean, Rams beat Saints for a Super Bowl on a bad call. Yeah, that was the no call on the pass interference. That was the let them play mentality. You know, Nickel Roby-Coleman comes in and clocks. What was it? Was it Brandon Cooks? I can't remember who it was. But Nickel Roby-Coleman comes in and I think he clocks the receiver out of bounds, right? We all remember that, right? They don't call that pass interference. One of the most blatant pass interference missed calls that we've seen in NFL history in such a big spot. And in that moment, that ref crew had the let them play mentality right at the forefront of their frontal lobe. And now we're in Super Bowl 57 after Roger Goodell's infamously caught on camera saying he feels like the reffing has never been better. And then that is your call. That was the wrong time. That was the wrong time, in my opinion. A hold is a hold, like Harry says, but I think sometimes your discretion has to be better. That's me. That's me. And it's also another thing, like it's a non-reviewable call too. So it's like the second that ref throws that flag, unless they pick it up after discussion, there's nothing that can be done about it. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a ticky-tacky, bad time. I'm not going to call it a bad flag, but I'm going to call it a bad time to throw that flag. And the NFL has infamously had an issue of holding onto the flag in big moments and letting players do illegal shit to get away with things at the end of games. That was not one of them. Should have held on to the flag. This is one job I wouldn't mind robots taking over. Hey, that would be something. I don't think we'll ever get to that point, but because we're still spotting the ball with the eyes of 58-year-old referees, but shit. That you're not wrong on that one. Man, but yeah, I mean, we look at these stats, right? The Eagles had 35 minutes of time of possession in this game. 35 minutes. They held the ball for over half of this football game. 11 more minutes than the Chiefs had it, and they still can come out on top. It came down to another big play in this game was the bad punt by that Sissons kid. Well, what's that punter's name? The Eagles punter. Eagles punter. It wasn't Brett Kern. What's the Eagles punter's name? Someone help me out. Eagles. Why is it not coming up? But the bad punt by the Eagles punter, that gave Kadarius Toney time to return that, and he was able to take it down to like the 10-yard line. Aaron Sippis, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Michael. Aaron Sippis. That was a terrible punt. You cannot drill a line drive to one of the shiftiest players in the NFL, and he made you pay. He ran it all the way back to the 10. There is no guaranteeing the Chiefs get into field goal range in that position. There's no guaranteeing they get in the red zone. There's no guaranteeing that they end up with 7 points. And even if they do, they're going to waste a hell of a lot of their own time getting down there. But they allowed, that bad punt allowed for the Chiefs to come back into that game and really not spend much time doing so and really get a grasp on it again. That was a huge momentum shift, that bad punt. So the Eagles really shot themselves in the foot. Regardless of how invisible their pass rush seemed at points, the Eagles did shoot themselves in the foot with a couple just specific plays in this game. The Jalen Hurts fumble, the bad punt by Aaron Sippis. Of course, the hold by Bradbury. I mean, regardless, hold or not, you got to let him go. I mean, Bradbury, you got to let him go. The worst case scenario there was not the Chiefs scoring. The worst case scenario was the Chiefs getting a first down without scoring. And, Bradbury's got to know in the back of his mind, like, hey, giving up points here really is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, they let them score there. They go up by 7. There's a minute 15 left or however much time. And the Eagles are getting the ball back. They've been explosive on offense all night. Jalen Hurts has not shied away from the moment when he had to drop back to pass. I firmly believe they would have been in a pretty good spot to at least tie the game. And maybe Nick Sirianni's a psychopath enough to go for 2 to win it. But Bradbury's got to know in that moment, hey, look, if you score, have it. You can't hold. You can't hold. You cannot hold. Yeah, Eagles time management, it really was great for a majority of the game. There were drives that went on very long. They'd only end up with 3 points, but for the most part, that game was played the way that it needed to be played from a Philadelphia perspective. They needed to hold on to the football. They needed to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field, and the passing game needed to be effective. And that's exactly what happened. Jalen Hurts threw for over 300 yards. Right? Hold on, let me just fact check that. I think. Yeah, Jalen Hurts threw for 304. He had a passing touchdown. He was effective with his legs on the ground. They were dominant in the aspects they had to be. And, you know, they possessed the ball and kept Mahomes off the field. That the best way to beat Mahomes is to keep him off the field. And they did that. It was just the tiny mistakes. Well, the big mistakes, but the individual mistakes that were just, they loomed way too large. Between that fumble by Jalen Hurts and the bad punt by Aaron Sippis. Those were ultimately the two plays that I felt like were the most game changing. And then of course the hold at the end. It was a shoot yourself in the foot type of day for the Eagles. Poor interpretation of the rule, especially when they let them play for 58 minutes. I agree. They let them play all game. They've let other teams play in big moments like that all year long. That was the wrong time to throw that flag. I wholeheartedly agree. With that. But we got to give credit where credit is due, right? Let's go look at some of the play design by Andy Reid. Let's go look at the Kadarius Toney touchdown. And then also wasn't Sky Moore that had Sky Moore that kind of walked into the end zone free as well. Let's see. Stop me now. Okay, check this out. This is really what made the difference on the offensive side of the ball as well. Not going to take away from the fact that Patrick Mahomes was stellar. On a bum ankle, he did what he had to do. This is where the game was won, though.
Tony.
Schematics, the play calling, the deep process to keep the Eagles defense tremendously confused all night, especially in that second half. I mean, we're going to see it, the first portion of the clip doesn't show it, and they actually did this in the first half as well. They did it all game, actually, now that I think about it. Three of the Chiefs' touchdowns came on the same type of concept, and the Eagles just could not fucking figure it out. So Kadarius Toney's going to come in he's going to be on the boundary, right? Outside of Travis Kelce. He's going to come in motion, and then he's going to cut back out. So, I mean, they obviously described it in the broadcast as well, but you see Darius Slay, he's prepping for him to continue. And by the time he cuts back and stops, their momentum's all inside. Look at that. And they all are shifted. They're all tight. They're all close to Travis.
Quick throw. Tony's got it. Tony.
When you let these quick receivers off the line of scrimmage change direction, and you are not shifting your hips fast, and you're allowing yourself to get caught right, this is what's going to happen. And it happens 3 times.
Tony's got it. Tony.
Miscommunications and an inability to adjust the line of scrimmage happened to them 3 times in this game. On the Kadarius Toney touchdown, it happened. I think it was Sky Moore as well that had a touchdown in which this happened on. Let's go see. If we can find it. Here we go. I better put 5,000 on Sky Moore to score a touchdown at 6:15.
Man wide open.
Fucking wish I was that psychotic. Same thing here. We have, I believe that's Marquez Valdez scaling. Sky Moore is going to come from this time the left side boundary, right? He's going to motion inside. This is going to draw the defenders in. And I think that's Avonte Maddox that gets confused. And all of a sudden his man is wide open on the other side of the field. I mean, he's getting prepared to what I think Avonte Maddox was preparing, you know, how they do like the shovel passes to Sky Moore sometimes, or they give him a handoff on a jet sweep. I think that's what Avonte Maddox was anticipating, because you could see by his angle. I think he's kind of going in to cut this off. I think that's his kind of path of direction would have been to kind of cut off Sky Moore right where he gets the ball around Travis Kelce's area, because typically Sky Moore gets the ball here. He's going to try and fit it between probably Kelce and the tackle. That's typically where Sky Moore likes to cut that up. Avonte Maddox, I think, was trying to project that, and once Sky Moore cut it back out, he's fucking fried meat. So that, you know, like I said, Andy Reid was huge. in this regard. And we're going to go to the Travis Kelce touchdown as well. And, the broadcast broke this down, so credit to them, on the spot, really getting this right. But this just speaks to who I really think won this game. And I think it was Andy Reid. Hold on, let me see if I can find the clip. Travis Kelce touchdown. Because I do think offensively this game isn't close if Andy Reid's not the head coach. The first half was obviously ugly, but it was the adjustments made in the second half that really made the biggest difference. So here, okay, I believe this is the touchdown. So what happens here is Darius Slay is originally in man against Travis Kelce, right? Or at least that is his man. And Kelsey's going to come in motion in here, and it's this pre-snap motion all night that was just fucking with the Eagles mentally. And I don't think this might also attribute to the fact that, that whole Mickey Mouse schedule kind of thing that we heard about the Eagles and how they got to this point and how they had it really easy. They hit the lottery ticket for a schedule. They didn't have any tough games. Maybe this kind of was something they didn't prepare for. They for the first time were not only outperformed, but they had to match the level of a chess master at the head coach position. And that's something they really hadn't had to deal with as much. At least, well, let's put it this way. They hadn't had to deal with a team yet that had the mastermind of a head coach and a play caller, as well as the players to execute all of that. They ran into a Giants team in Brian Dable. He's a genius, offensive genius, and he was excellent this year, but they didn't have the roster to exactly execute to the level that he necessarily could have had them to. But Andy Reid here has the players to execute this kind of stuff, and he's a genius. So it's just a chess master playing with his pieces. Here, going back on this play specifically, we have Travis Kelce coming outside from the boundary. It's the same thing, man. Holy shit. It's the same thing. He's going to come outside from the boundary. Darius Slay's originally supposed to be with Travis Kelce, right? He comes inside. The switch happens here when Marcus Epps comes down instead. They switch men. Here. Travis Kelce's going to beat Marcus Epps. It's simply a matchup game. Travis Kelce sees it. Patrick Mahomes sees it, and Travis Kelce beats his man. Ideally, I get that you want to have good communication at the line. You want to switch off when motion happens here. You don't want to get entangled in whatever. But, I feel like in this situation, we got to dumb it down. Like, your best player in coverage has to be on their top target in this situation here. And that switch between Marcus Epps, it's not even like we went from Darius Slay to CJ Gardner-Johnson. Marcus Epps is not a terrible safety by any means, but you can't have Travis Kelce against Marcus Epps. Darius Slay in that situation, not saying he breaks up the pass, but definitely a hell of a lot harder of a throw and catch. But this is just going to show what Travis Kelce did. I'm misspeaking all night. Just goes to show what Andy Reid did all day long to really terrorize the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles. Using Kelce as a decoy was effective. Yeah, in the second half, he was nowhere near as effective. I couldn't believe they let Kelce get out as much as they did early in the game. But after that, they really adjusted to that. And the Chiefs, I'm struggling. The Chiefs really struggled to kind of figure it out. After that first initial 7-point drive, the Chiefs were struggling to kind of put together a sustained offensive drive because Travis Kelce was being taken away. They were keying in on him. He wasn't getting much room to run. And they were forcing Mahomes and the Chiefs offense to move the ball in different ways. And it was kind of working, but not nearly as much as it could have been. And then eventually, as the game progressed and we got to the second half, the Chiefs defense, or the Eagles defense, was suddenly losing the mental side of the game. They were by far the better unit. There were better players on the Eagles defense than there are better players on the Chiefs offense, if that makes sense. But it was the mental side of the game that they lost. Lucas says the Eagles defense should be getting held accountable as well. The Eagles were one of the best sacking teams of all time. They couldn't even get sacks against some of the worst tackles in the league. Yeah, there are a lot of people saying, the Chiefs offensive line is good. They're better than what they're advertised. And I do agree with that. But the Chiefs tackles have given up some of the most pressures in the entire NFL. They have given up pressure after pressure. Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown have not been the best duo in terms of tackles, and we've seen the terrorizing impact from the Eagles off the edge. and tonight they were invisible. So Lucas, definitely. I mean, it was a shocking development. I never would have thought that after this game I'd be sitting here saying that the unit that was most disappointing out of every unit in this game would have been the pass rush for Philadelphia. I mean, this was the unit that I thought would ultimately win the Eagles this game. Like my read on this game was centralized around the pass rush of Philadelphia. And to be honest with you, I felt like the Chiefs were getting more of a rush at Jalen Hurts. How many times was Steve Spagnuolo sending off, he was flooding the right side of the field at Jalen Hurts. What he was doing was, Jalen Hurts would take the snap under center, right? And he would send his front four at the right arm of Jalen Hurts. And they would flush him out of the pocket from the right side to avoid him not only from rushing out to the right, but push him out of the pocket to his left. And obviously it's much harder to throw cross-body, right? So Steve Spagnuolo defensively really, really gave Jalen Hurts hell at times. As great as he was flushed out of the pocket many times, sent to his left many times. And I thought the Chiefs defense was far more impressive. Far more impressive the Chiefs defense was than the Eagles, without question. They gave up 35 points, but that's a tough Eagles offensive unit, right? They made the plays that they had to in the biggest of moments. So ultimately the Chiefs defense was probably the most impressive unit in my opinion tonight. Maybe that's not true, because Andy Reid was so good. I don't know. It's tough. Both sides of the ball for the Chiefs played more than well enough. They didn't want the Eagles to touch the ball again because the refs knew who was going to win, but the players just play ball. Hey, I do think for what it's worth, I do think if they don't throw a flag on that Juju hold by Bradbury, I do think the Eagles probably drive down the field, and I would not have been shocked if they scored a touchdown. Just the way that they've been moving that ball. I mean, at the very least, I think they're getting in field goal range. Yeah, for sure. I thought maybe the Eagles went into halftime after the way the first half ended. Maybe the Eagles went into half kind of expecting Mahomes to come out relatively hobbled, not as mobile, not able to step into throws as much. So maybe they were anticipating a lesser Patrick Mahomes, and they were caught off guard. Maybe that had something to do with it. That would be extremely irresponsible and very bad from a coaching's perspective. But maybe that was part of their thought process. They're like, you know what? We have this guy right where we want him. He's gonna be stuck in the pocket. We're gonna be able to collapse the pocket on him. He's not gonna be able to escape nearly as well. He's not gonna be able to step up nearly as well, and we're gonna be able to bring him to the ground that way. But ultimately, that wasn't the case. I'm not sure if that was the thought process. Not gonna say that necessarily was what happened, but who knows? Maybe they were anticipating Mahomes to be a little bit more hobbled. But we all know the types of shit. Well, let's put it this way. We all know the NFL has a lot of shit to shoot up these players with, right? I don't know what the hell they gave Mahomes at half, but he was not like fucking around. Like he was in a lot of pain. That was not like, ow, my foot is hurting, but I'm okay and I'm just going to put on a show. That was like, oh my God, I have a high ankle sprain and I can't put any fucking pressure on my foot right now. That's what that was. And we know he got sent to the locker room and they shot that dude up with fucking who knows what they shot that dude up with, but it was probably enough that should be illegal. Like, let's be honest here. They probably gave that dude more shit, probably beyond the legal limit, to make sure that he wasn't feeling that much pain. Because my God, he came out in that half and he did everything he had to do, and it didn't look like he was that impacted. Let's be honest. Reid, go to halftime adjuster. I agree. Andy Reid, I think, was who won this game ultimately. And Greg, I was thinking this too, man. I thought Greg Olsen was fantastic. He was fighting for his job. Obviously, Tom Brady's going to be coming out in 2024 to do his thing in the broadcast booth, but I thought Greg Olsen was great. I really did. And I know Mike Pereira and him disagreed on the holding call, but he was speaking everything that we were saying from our couch, right? It's a ticky-tacky hold in that spot, and Greg Olsen agreed. I thought Greg Olsen was also fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking that as the game was progressing. At first, I'm like, who's this again? I'm like, oh, fuck, it's Greg Olsen. He's doing a great job. He's doing a great-ass job. No problem, Space. Yeah, I mean, it really was a masterclass on the part of Kansas City and the play calling and the play design. It really was beautiful from Andy Reid. The Eagles doubled Kelce in the second half, which allowed Juju to heat up in the second half. Yeah, Juju definitely was playing a huge part. I think he had 5 or 6 catches, or I think he had 5 catches, 6 targets in the second half. And yeah, I mean, Juju definitely had a big impact in the second half. There's always one guy outside of Travis Kelce that typically steps up. We never really know who it is. Last week or 2 weeks ago against the Cincinnati Bengals, it was Marquez Valdes-Scantling. This week it was Juju Smith-Schuster. There was always one guy that stepped up next to Travis Kelce. So and today it was Juju. It was Juju. How do you think the Eagles will perform next year? I think they'll come back pretty strong. I don't anticipate them to necessarily take a fall off, but I don't anticipate them also to only lose, what did they lose, 3 games on the season? I think they're going to be more so around a 10 to 12 win team next year. I think they still have a very good chance at taking home the NFC East, but they definitely will not be the powerhouse they were this year, because as much as I do believe that they deserve to be where they were definitely the best team in the NFC, and we knew that prior to the season even beginning, if we're being honest. But they did get a lot of fortunate breaks. They caught a lot of breaks with their schedule that allowed them to really overperform at times. Next season, I don't think that's the case. They're going to see a lot tougher matchups. They're going to have a tougher regular season, and I do think they drop more games during the regular season than what we saw this year. So I would say next year the Eagles are still pretty damn good in the NFC, but they'll probably be around a 10 to 12 win team. That's probably what my overall prediction will emulate when that time comes. I will give Spagnuolo credit. The Chiefs didn't have many superstars on defense, but during the second half, they only gave 11 points. Totally. I agree right there with you, man. Steve Spagnuolo, like I said, he had the formula to really put a cap on Jalen Hurts at times. He did have 4 touchdowns, but he also flushed through Jalen Hurts at the best of moments, at the biggest of moments, and really, his defense ultimately made some of the biggest plays in this game. So Steve Spagnuolo, I also think, deserves a lot of credit, and they got a lot of rookies, man. Trent McDuffie was phenomenal this year as a Bills fan. I like Kyrie Elam. I think he was misutilized, underutilized, and not really given the fair opportunity. But, I mean, I was such a Trent McDuffie fan going into the draft. I was so happy to see him falling. And, of course, what happens? The Chiefs trade up with the Patriots, and they take Trent McDuffie. I was so deflated. When that happened. I have the clip of me still, just how upset I was when the Chiefs did take Trent McDuffie, and I knew he was going to be a star. He missed some time this year, but he has really been, next to L'Jarius Sneed, a rock in that secondary for Kansas City. So shout out to Trent McDuffie, man. He's been a dog. And on top of all the other rookies and young kids that team has playing on both sides of the ball, that franchise has knocked the last few years out of the park. For a season that was speculated to be a down year for Kansas City, losing Tyreek Hill, they won the fucking Super Bowl, man. I mean, that's pretty unheard of, for being honest. Could consider Mahomes this year was a perfect year of football. Yeah, I mean, we're honestly getting to that point. I mean, I felt like the Chiefs at a point were vulnerable because they were truthfully relying on Patrick Mahomes' MVP performances on a week-to-week basis to win football games. I mean, this guy was playing out of his godforsaken mind. I mean, some of the shit Mahomes was doing, some of Mahomes' worst performances were still unbelievable. We're still highlight reel worthy because of how high of a level he was playing football at. And, as the season wound down and we got into the postseason, that was when we saw the Chiefs defense really step up. We saw the Chiefs defense really become more of their own unit, and they started to make plays for the Chiefs offense and step up when they had to. And that's what happened today. They stiffened up in the biggest of moments. They made some tough plays that I'm not sure many other units do. And they executed a game plan well enough to ultimately come out on top. So Mahomes, like I said, he played great. He did what he had to do on a bum ankle. Dude was fantastic. I think he received a lot of help too. He received a shit ton of help. It wasn't the greatest Super Bowl MVP performance we've ever seen. And I'm not, like I said, taking that away from him. But if I were to give out the Super Bowl MVP, it probably would have been to Andy Reid. And, perhaps just an overall Super Bowl MVP to maybe Steve and the Chiefs defense entirely, because of the way they really kept this game in check for the Chiefs offense at times. I do think so too. Mahomes did kind of put together the most perfect season we've seen probably ever. It's rigged. I'm not on that bandwagon, man. This is the wrong guy to talk to if you want to talk about conspiracies and rigged shit. I ain't that guy. I love the lesser known. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm getting to all your comments. This was stuff that was from 5 minutes ago. I love the lesser known commentators in the booth. Romo and Nance and Aikman and Buck just don't do it for me. They show too much bias. Like guys like Olsen just watch the game like the analytical fan. Yeah, I think so too. I like Romo a lot. Out of that group you named, I think Romo's the best in my opinion. But Olsen is also, I think, great. I think today Olsen had a job-saving performance, if you will, from the booth's perspective. So I hope that he doesn't kind of lose his job and he kind of phases out of the picture, because I thought he did great tonight. And like you said, I think he did a very good job kind of speaking from not necessarily like a pure fan perspective, but a not strictly by the book perspective. We see these guys sometimes, especially, the referee analyst like Mike Pereira, they have him come in and he's kind of, always so by the book. And he doesn't let like sometimes what feels like common sense leak into his opinions and his calls. And Greg Olsen, he allowed common sense to impact what he was spewing in the booth, right? The first thing he said was on that flag, it was a ticky-tacky call. He doesn't know if it should have been called. And Mike Pereira was like, no, it should have been a flag. It was a hole, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but Greg Olsen makes a fair point. And I think Mike Pereira, if he's not on air and he's not trying to save face for the sake of the NFL, would also probably have agreed. But yeah, I think Greg Olsen did a good job with that, which I was appreciative of, right? That's the right word. Tonight in his performance. So I did like that. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, man. Brett Veach he's knocked out the last two draft classes big time, dude. He really has. Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie, Trey Smith. Sky Moore's been, in and out being impactful, but he's been pretty solid. Who else did he draft, man? I mean, almost every player that this Chiefs team has is young. And of course you have your veterans sprinkled around there, but Chiefs depth chart. Let's see who else he's drafted recently. But I feel like the Chiefs have had two of the better draft classes over the last few years. Isaiah Pacheco falls under that wavelength. I mean, the signing of Jerick McKinnon was so huge. We cannot understate how big Jerick McKinnon has been for this Chiefs Super Bowl run. I mean, my God, his pass protection ability, what he did out of the backfield as a receiver. He was a lead blocker on Pacheco's touchdown. This dude, how big is Jerick McKinnon? He ain't a big dude, but he knows how to use his size, leverage it against bigger bodies, and he was a force. Jerick McKinnon, huge signing. So there's Pacheco. There's Jerick McKinnon, huge impact. Juju turned out to be pretty beneficial down the stretch. You're right. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he did a great job of kind of carving out the receiver room at the loss of Tyreek Hill. He made up for it with depth talent. The trade for Kadarius Toney, that ultimately was a pretty big factor at times too. He changed the game in different ways. Of course, like I said, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, George Karlaftis, didn't even talk about him. George Karlaftis has made a bunch of plays, throughout this year as a whole that have been pretty damn good. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, I'm pretty sure was his pick as well. I mean, man, what a job he has done. What a job he has done. Yeah, I mean, for real. I know Matt Nagy, actually, ironically enough, I think Matt Nagy had a lot to do with the drafting of Patrick Mahomes, too, for the Chiefs, for what it's worth. But, yeah, they do still deserve credit for that as well, of course. But yeah, I think we got to start considering Brett Veach to be one of the top general managers in the NFL. It's a conversation that I think I'll be looking forward to having in the offseason, because he was just, he's been killing it. Outside of like the CEH draft pick a couple of years ago, I mean, shit, dude, this guy's been killing it. When did he get there? When did Brett Veach get over here? Brett Veach. Brett Veach career will look up. Let's see when did Brett Veach become the general manager, of the Kansas City Chiefs? It looks like 2017. So that was, look at that, the year they drafted Mahomes, right? So yeah, I mean, Brett Veach has been pretty stellar in my opinion ever since he got there. And I don't think, of course, as much as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have to do with the success that this team has had, the team building has been miraculous. Brett Veach understands his personnel. He understands his coaching unit. He knows what they need, what they might need to succeed. He understands, what pieces are going to have to be on the board for Andy Reid to utilize, what Steve Spagnuolo can utilize. And some may have contemplated whether getting rid of Tyreek Hill was the right move. But hey, Brett Veach made a move. He couldn't pay Tyreek. He sent him out, and look where the Chiefs are now. Tyreek Hill sitting at home right now, fucking punching the wall. He's pissed, right? He's probably hoping, these fucking suckers, they need me. Like, they're not going to pay me. Those sorry asses need me. Do you see how much I impact that offense? They need me. And you're not going to pay me? You're just going to think you're going to get away with being just as good without me? and Brett Veach, that team said, yeah, we are. And they did. They did it. And the really scary thing is, the Chiefs are one epic collapse in a second half against the Bengals last season from being in 3 straight Super Bowls, probably going back to back. I don't think the Rams beat the Chiefs last year, specifically, if that were to have been the hypothetical matchup. I guess that's hard to say, though, because Odell went down, and that was really a big factor in that game. I think Odell and that offense was pretty stellar. So when he went down, that kind of was a big turning point. But nevertheless, I do still think the Chiefs win that game if they're hypothetically playing the Rams. So we're talking about 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, multiple AFC championship appearances. This is a dynasty, folks. I thought it was kind of coming to a slim close, the talk of a dynasty. But we're here. And I think the idea of the Brady and Mahomes GOAT conversation, I think it's going to start to heat up. Not to mention, I think, we hear the conversation between LeBron and Jordan, and I kind of feel like this is going to emulate that to an extent, or at least hypothetically, if the Chiefs would have lost this game, I feel like Brady Mahomes would have been so much like Jordan and James, just because, obviously James had been to so many finals, he just couldn't win. He hasn't been able to win enough to necessarily make a good argument against Jordan. And now if the Chiefs were to have lost this game, that would have been one Super Bowl out of the 4 times that they've been there. And you could be saying, oh yeah, Mahomes made it this many times, but he wasn't able to win it. It would have been like the same argument, like emulated across professional sports. It would have been pretty cool. Well, would it have been? I don't know. I guess I don't have an opinion on that subject, but that's what I was thinking. Assuming that they lost this game, that it would have been just like that argument. But at this point, it is undoubtedly getting very close. Brady just retired, and this kid is breathing down his neck already. Fuck. Him and Travis Kelce and Mahomes already are like tied for Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady for the most passing touchdowns between a duo in the postseason. Do you know how dumb that is? That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Yeah, facts, man. Plus, they stuck it in our eye, trading Hill to our division. Honest to God. That was a double whammy. Not only did they get rid of him, still be successful, they sent him to the fucking Bills division. Yeah, facts, Lucas. Oh, man, yeah, let's talk about the Bills for a second here. Yeah, if you have been following me for any amount of time, you would know I was not a big Ken Dorsey advocate. for weeks like 7 through 20. What did we make it to week 20? Yeah, and I think many people would agree. Many people feel the same way. I feel like, as Stephon Diggs has even gone on record in multiple interviews since the season ended saying he felt like something changed. He's upset with the way the year ended. He said specifically in an interview that after week 9, something changed. That was the week that Allen hurt his elbow, but I also feel like something schematically was changed at some point. I think prior to week 9, honestly. I think it was before week 9. But Ken Dorsey, I don't know. I'm not the biggest X's and O's guy. I'm not gonna, necessarily break down hours and hours of film. I can't. Like my eyes physically couldn't do that. 2, I don't have the time. And 3, I just quite frankly don't like to do that. I just don't. So I'm not the guy to ask, but something went wrong with Ken Dorsey, what he was trying to do with this offense, the pieces he had in front of him, and it ultimately failed. I think there was a personnel issue. I think we could have used another weapon offensively. I think this offensive line failed us in many regards, but I also think that we saw the same exact unit a year ago put up one of the most historic offensive performances that we had seen in a postseason game ever. We saw this exact same unit put up ridiculous postseason numbers. Some of the best postseason numbers, specifically Josh Allen having some of the best postseason quarterback numbers that we've ever seen. And suddenly now we have an offense this year that for the first 5 weeks looked unstoppable and then suddenly just dud. I mean, it went from the Bills offense could be seen in 3 phases. We had phase number 1, the short, lethal, tactical short game. It almost looked like a Tom Brady offense, if we're being honest. Josh Allen was taking the short shit. The run game was operating, and we looked deadly. We looked unstoppable. We had 3 to 4 deep shot daggers that really stuck the knife in the heart of the opposing defense and really put the can, on a victory for us. So that was like the first 5 weeks or so, and then we got to the middle portion of the season where we were still winning games, but it was becoming glaringly obvious that we were winning games because Josh Allen was a superhuman, and it was just on the back of Josh Allen and him being a freak, right? So that was the middle portion of the season. That was phase 2. Phase 3 was when Josh Allen and later on in the back end of the season kind of lost it up here. That was when I think Josh Allen really started to struggle himself, and he was no longer able to mask the imperfections that Ken Dorsey and this offense were experiencing. That was, phase 3 was when not only did we schematically fail, not only was the personnel failing, but Josh Allen specifically was no longer able to play like a superhuman. And he was kind of collapsing under the pressure at times. The amount of mental mistakes were overwhelming and too many for us to handle. And not to mention, I just don't think Ken Dorsey was putting him in a place to be successful either. So, yeah, like I said, the 3 phases of the Bills offense this year were unstoppable, Josh Allen, and then just a complete and utter collapse of embarrassing performances, which we did see in that Bengals game. It kind of all just avalanched on top of us right before our eyes on our own home field. I don't want to talk about that, but Ken Dorsey's going to have to figure his shit out. I didn't expect us to fire either Leslie Frazier or Ken Dorsey. And I'm not necessarily sure I wanted that to be the case. I'm not a big fan of seeing a revolving door at any head coach or offensive coordinator position. But with that being said, I do think if Ken Dorsey is going to be returning, he almost needs to return as like a re-imaged coordinator, if you will. He needs to return as a new face, just in the old body. So almost essentially in a way, firing the old Ken Dorsey, bringing in the new Ken Dorsey. That's the kind of transformation I'm going to have to see in order for me to kind of instill my full confidence in him. Because, I mean, to be fair, I hated Brian Daboll early on. I could not stand Brian Daboll. He did some shit that pissed me off. I was done with Brian Daboll. He redeemed himself, and he eventually turned into the super pinnacle offensive mastermind genius that he is today. And that came with time. We didn't give up on him, and he eventually not only helped develop Josh Allen, but he learned how to put his players, including Josh Allen, in positions to be successful. Hopefully Ken Dorsey kind of goes through that same transformation, and that's why I am in favor of sticking around with him. So hopefully Ken Dorsey did learn a lot from not only our season, but what he's seen tonight. And we kind of see him return next year re-imaged, and he begins to understand what it means to put players in positions to be successful, understanding their skill set, and kind of understanding the human beings that you have playing for you, and being able to control their emotions, put them in, put their minds in the right place. I think Josh Allen is a kid that he's a unicorn quarterback that has every physical trait you could ever possibly ask for to play the position. I think the mental side of the game he still is developing with. I think you could say the same thing about Patrick Mahomes. The difference is Patrick Mahomes has Andy Reid as his rock, his play caller in his corner. This season, Josh Allen did not have Brian Dable, who was his rock, who was his play caller. This year was Ken Dorsey. That was a change, and I don't think Ken Dorsey knew how to reel Josh Allen in. Every great quarterback has a sidekick coordinator that is right there with them, that knows what needs to be done in certain positions, that understands their mindset, that understands how they react in certain situations. And Ken Dorsey didn't quite seem to have that grasp on Josh's mental state. And whenever he'd see Josh kind of starting to spiral, it didn't seem like Ken Dorsey really knew what to do to kind of put him back on track. And I think that's very important for any quarterback, not just, a young guy, but even a veteran. You need to have your rock. Like I said, every single great quarterback has a great coordinator, has a sidekick, has that rock next to him. And I feel like Josh Allen, specifically what we saw this year, was just a lack of that rock from Ken Dorsey, and he spiraled off the tracks. He was a runaway train at times, and Ken Dorsey was the conductor, and he did not know how to slow the train down and straighten it out. So yeah, that's where I'm at with the Bills. I'll probably say that like 45 times over the season, this offseason. But yeah, that's about probably all I have, to be honest with you. It was a good game tonight. I'm happy that we were able to get a good game despite the shitty ending. It was a good game. Financially, I suffered because I had Patrick Mahomes not even over his passing yard marks. I had Patrick Mahomes over some alternate marks of 225 and 250. And he couldn't even crack 200 yards, despite the fact that they scored 38 points. So, I was pretty demoralized after the game ended, just because, I felt like I read the game right, and it didn't quite go out in the favor that I was hoping. So I was pretty demoralized in that aspect, especially because I had Mahomes on like all my tickets. And I wasn't even asking for much. Like I was asking for less than what the books posted Mahomes for, and I couldn't even get that. That sucked. So honestly, I was pretty demoralized. But I'm over it. I'm over it now. I'm happy to just be able to say I enjoyed the game for what it was, because it was a great one, and I hope you were able to say the same. Regardless of the outcome. But with that being said, guys. I want to end off on this note. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It was a fantastic live, ton of interaction. This offseason, I'm going to be coming at you guys with a ton of content. The offseason grind is a bigger one than the regular season grind, I will say. It requires a lot more creativity, but I feel like this is where I personally thrive as a content creator. So I appreciate all you guys for sticking around, and there's going to be a ton to come this offseason, because I look forward to being able to kind of not necessarily have to make content based on news, based on what happens in games, but kind of be able to explore different opportunities to allow me to differentiate myself from everyone else. So if you've enjoyed tonight, hopefully you stick around for that future, for the future months, because it's going to be fun. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you sticking around. I appreciate the kind words. If you guys are interested, one final word as well. I am partnered with Thrive Fantasy. They are a sports betting, prop betting app. They're an up-and-coming sports betting app. I'm partnered with them. You can use code CAVE, CAVE, Link is down in the description of this live stream. If you are interested, you click on that link, deposit whatever you want to deposit, use code CAVE. You get a 100% deposit match. 100% deposit match. So if you deposit $10, you get 20. If you deposit 20, you get 40. And you also get the opportunity to take advantage of whatever new user promos that they have going on. So hypothetically tonight, if you would have joined before the game, you would have gotten the opportunity to take advantage of an Andy Reid over Andy Reid. I'm reading the comments. You would have gotten the opportunity to take advantage of a Jalen Hurts over half a passing yard line or Patrick Mahomes over half a passing yard. Obviously, they're going to hit that. They're free legs, but they do that kind of stuff all the time for new users. So if you are interested, I'd greatly appreciate going down in the description, using that link, and signing up. Trustworthy app. I wouldn't promote anything that I thought was a scam. So pretty good, pretty cool guys over there. So go check them out. But like I said, guys, happy to end it off on that note. This goes to show what an offensive coach could do. I know it's Andy Reid, but still. Yeah, Justin, definitely. We just ran through that whole thing. Ken Dorsey has a lot of self-reflection to do this offseason. And my MVP of this game is going to be Andy Reid. My MVP of Super Bowl 57 is Andy Reid. He made the ultimate difference from start to finish for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if Nick Sirianni and Andy Reid flip places, the Eagles probably win this game by 50. Like, let's be honest here. So credit to him, credit to the Chiefs. Happy to see Mahomes thrive. Honestly, I'm kind of over the fact that him and Josh kind of are going back and forth. I think the conversation is to be laid to rest for now. So I'm happy for Mahomes. I think he's a good guy. I like the Chiefs team. So I will end on that note. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys have a good night. Have a good week. Stick around for more. And like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.